Huffaker Hawks. Thanks so much for coming back. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to read a few more chapters of Flora and Ulysses. Let's find out what happens to Ulysses. Is he a superhero that can type? Chapter 20, What It Said. I love your round head, the brilliant green, the watching blue, these letters, this world, you. I am very, very hungry. You guys, it's a little poem. Chapter 21, Poetry. They were sitting in Tootie's office. Tootie was on the couch with a package of frozen peas on her head. She had fainted. Unfortunately, she had hit her head on the edge of the desk on her way down. Fortunately, Flora had remembered in an issue of Terrible Things That Can Happen to You, advising that a bag of frozen peas made an excellent cold compress to provide comfort and reduce swelling. Read it one more time, said William Spiver to Flora. Flora read Ulysses' words aloud again. The squirrel wrote poetry, said Tootie, in a voice filled with wonder. Keep those peas on your head, said Flora. I don't get the last part, said William Spiver. The part about hunger? What's that mean? Flora turned away from the computer and looked at William Spiver's dark glasses and saw again her round-headed pajamas self-reflected there. It means he's hungry, she said. He hasn't had any breakfast. Oh, said William Spiver. I see. It's literal. Ulysses was sitting on his hind legs beside the computer. He nodded helpfully. It's poetry, said Tootie from the couch. Ulysses puffed out his chest the tiniest bit. Well, it might be poetry, said William Spiver, but it's not great poetry. It's not even good poetry. But what does this all mean, said Tootie. Why does it have to mean something, said William Spiver. The universe is a random place. Oh, for heaven's sake, William, said Tootie. Flora felt something well up inside her. What was it? Pride in the squirrel, annoyance at William Spiver, wonder, hope? Suddenly, she remembered the words that appeared over Alfred T. Slipper's head when he was submerged in the vat of incandesto. Do you doubt him? Do not. Do you doubt him, said Flora. Of course I doubt him, said William Spiver. Do not, said Flora. Why, said William Spiver. She stared at him. Take off your glasses, she said. I want to see your eyes. No, said William Spiver. Take them off. I won't. Children, said Tootie, please. Who was William Spiver really? Yes, he was the great-nephew of Tootie Tickham, suddenly, suspiciously, come to stay this summer. But who was he really? What if he was some kind of comic book character himself? What if he was the villain whose powers were depleted as soon as the light of the world hit his eye? Incandesto is forever being attacked by his arch-nemesis, the darkness of 10,000 hands. Every superhero has an arch-nemesis. What if Ulysses' arch-nemesis was William Spiver? The truth must be known, said Flora. She stepped forward. She reached out her hand to remove William Spiver's glasses, and then she heard her name. Flora Bell, your father's here. Flora Bell, said William Spiver in a gentle voice. Ulysses was still sitting on his hind legs. His ears were perked. He looked back and forth between Flora and William Spiver. We have to go, said Flora. Wait, said William Spiver. Flora picked Ulysses up by the scruff of his neck. She put him under her pajama top. Will I ever see you again? Said William Spiver. The universe is a random place, William Spiver, said Flora. Who can say whether we will ever meet again? Chapter 22, A Giant Ear. Her father was standing on the top step in front of the open door. He was wearing a dark suit and a tie and a hat with a brim, even though it was Saturday and summertime. Flora's father was an accountant at the firm Flinton, Floston and Frick. Flora wasn't sure, but she thought it was possible that her father was the world's loneliest man. He didn't even have Incandesto and Dolores to keep him company anymore. Hi, Pop, she said. Flora, said her father. He smiled at her, and then he sighed. I'm not ready yet. Oh, that's okay, said her father. He sighed again. I'll wait. He walked with Flora into the living room. He sat down on the couch. He took up his hat and balanced it on one knee. Are you in the house now, George? Flora's mother shouted from the kitchen. Is Flora with you? I'm inside, shouted Flora's father. Flora's with me. The clack, clack, clack of the typewriter echoed through the house. Silverware rattled, and then there was silence. What are you doing, George? Her mother shouted. I am sitting on the couch, Phyllis. I am waiting for my daughter. Flora's father removed his hat from his left knee to his right knee and then back to his left knee again. Ulysses shifted under Flora's pajamas. What are you two going to do today? Flora's mother shouted. I don't know, Phyllis. I can hear you perfectly well, George, said Flora's mother as she came into the living room. You don't need to shout, Flora. What have you got under your pajama top? Nothing, said Flora. Is it that squirrel? No, said Flora. What squirrel? Said Flora's father. Don't lie to me, said her mother. Okay, said Flora. It's the squirrel. I'm keeping him. I knew it. I knew you were hiding something. Listen to me. The squirrel is diseased. You are engaging in dangerous behavior. Flora turned away. She had a superhero under her pajamas. She didn't have to listen to her mother or anybody else for that matter. A new day was dawning, a girl with a superhero kind of day. I'm going to change now, she said. This will not work, Flora Bell. said her mother. That squirrel is not staying. What squirrel? Said Flora's father again. Flora went halfway up the stairs, and then she stopped. She stood on the landing. The criminal element suggested that anyone truly invested in fighting crime and besting criminals should learn to listen carefully. All words at all times, true or false, whispered or shouted, are clues to the workings of a human heart. Listen, you must. If you care to understand anything at all, become a giant ear. That's what the criminal element suggested. And this is what Flora intended to do. She pulled Ulysses out from underneath her pajama top. Sit on my shoulder, she whispered to him. Ulysses climbed on top of her shoulder. Listen, she said. He nodded. Flora felt brave and capable standing there on the landing with her squirrel on top of her shoulder. Do not hope, she whispered. Instead, observe. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She held herself absolutely still. She became a giant ear. And what Flora, the giant ear, heard was astonishing. Chapter 23. Enter the villain. George, said Flora's mother, we have a problem. Your daughter has become emotionally attached to a diseased squirrel. How's that? Said Flora's father. There's a squirrel, said her mother, speaking more slowly now, as if she were pointing at each word as she said it. There's a squirrel, repeated her father. The squirrel is not well. There's an unwell squirrel. There's a sack in the garage and a shovel. Okay, said Flora's father, there's a sack and a shovel in the garage. At this point, there was a very long silence. I need you to put the squirrel out of its misery, said Flora's mother. How's that? Said her father. For the love of Pete, George, shouted her mother. Put the squirrel in the sack and then hit him over the head with a shovel. Flora's father gasped. Flora gasped too. She was surprised at herself. The ladies in her mother's romance novels put their hands on their bosoms and gasped, but Flora was not a gasper. She was a cynic. Flora's father said, I don't understand. Flora's mother cleared her throat. She uttered the blood-soaked words again. She said them louder. She said them more slowly. You put the squirrel in the sack, George. You hit the squirrel over the head with the shovel. She paused. And then, she said, you use the shovel to bury the squirrel. Put the squirrel in a sack, hit the squirrel over the head with a shovel, said Flora's father in a squeaky, clean, despairing voice. Oh, Phyllis, no. Yes, said Flora's mother. It's the humane thing to do. Flora understood. She had made a mistake in thinking that William Spiver was anybody important. Everything was coming into sharp and terrifying focus. The story was beginning to make sense. Ulysses was a superhero, probably, and Phyllis Buckman was the arch nemesis, definite, wholly anticipated occurrences. Here's a picture of Phyllis and George. Chapter 24. Stalk, chase, threatened, poisoned, etc. He should have been shocked, but he wasn't, not really. It was a sad fact of his existence as a squirrel that there was always someone somewhere who wanted him dead. In his short life, Ulysses had been stalked by cats, attacked by raccoons, and shot at by BB gun slingshots and a bow and arrow. Granted, the arrow was made of rubber, but still, it had hurt. He had been shouted at, threatened. He had been flung ears over tail by a stream of water issuing from a garden hose turned on full force. Once at the public picnic grounds, a small girl had tried to beat him to death with her enormous teddy bear. And last fall, a pickup truck had run over his tail. Truthfully, the possibility of getting hit over the head with a shovel didn't seem that alarming. Life was dangerous, particularly if you were a squirrel. In any case, he wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about poetry. This is what Tootie said he had written. Poetry, you like the word, the smallness, its density, the way it rose up at the end as if it had wings. Poetry. Don't worry, said Flora. You're a superhero. This maleficence must be stopped. Ulysses dug his claws into Flora's pajamas to keep his balance on her shoulder. Maleficence, said Flora again. Poetry, thought Ulysses. Chapter 25. Seal, blubber. Flora's father's car seat smelled like butterscotch and ketchup, and Flora was in the back seat where the smell of butterscotch and ketchup was the most powerful. She had a Bootsy Boots shoebox with Ulysses in it in her lap, and she was feeling carsick even though the car wasn't moving yet. She was also feeling the tiniest bit overwhelmed. Things in general were pretty confusing. For instance, here was Ulysses sitting in a shoebox, knowing that there was a shovel in the trunk of the car, and that the man driving the car had been instructed to whack him over the head with the shovel, and the squirrel didn't look worried or afraid. He looked happy. And then there was Flora's mother, the person who had given Flora the shoebox to protect her little friend on his journey. We'll just put this washcloth in here as a comfy blanket. She was standing at the door, smiling and waving goodbye to them, as if truly she wasn't a murder-planning arch-nemesis. Talk about the darkness of 10,000 hands. Nothing was as it seemed. Flora looked down at the squirrel. Of course, he was not what he seemed either, and that was a good thing. an incandesto thing. Flora felt a shiver of belief and possibility pass through her. Her parents had no idea what kind of squirrel they were dealing with. Her father put the car in reverse. As she backed out of the driveway, Flora saw William Spiver standing in Tootie's front yard. He was looking up at the sky. His head turned slowly in the direction of the car. His glasses flashed in the sun. Tootie appeared. She was waving one of the pink gloves as if it were a flag of surrender. "Stop the car," she shouted. "Step on the gas," Flora said to her father. She did not want to talk to Tootie, and she definitely did not want to talk to William Spiver. She didn't want to see herself reflected in his dark glasses. She had her own thoughts about the random and confusing nature of the universe. She didn't need his too. Although she was in a hurry, there was a murder to stop, a superhero to mentor, villains to vanquish, darkness to eradicate. She couldn't waste time trading stupid thoughts with William Spiver. "Flora Belle," shouted William Spiver, almost as if he were reading her mind. "I've had some interesting thought." He ran toward the car and fell into the bushes. "Great Aunt Tootie," shouted, "I need your assistance." "What in the world is going on?" said her father. He slammed on the brakes. "It's just a temporarily blind boy," said Flora, "and Mrs. Tickham from next door. She's his aunt, his great aunt. Never mind. It doesn't make any difference. Keep going." But it was too late. Tootie had helped William Spiver out of the bushes. The two of them were walking toward the car. William Spiver was smiling. "Hello," her father called out to them. "I'm George Buckman. How do you do?" Flora's father introduced himself to everyone all the time, even if the person was someone he had already met. It was an annoying and extremely persistent habit. "Hello, sir," said William Spiver. "I'm William Spiver. I would like to speak to your daughter, Flora Belle." "I don't have time to talk to you right now, William Spiver," said Flora. "Great Aunt Tootie, can you assist me? Will you take me to Flora's side of the vehicle?" "Please excuse me while I escort this extremely disturbed and neurotic child to the other side of the car," said Tootie. "Certainly, certainly," said Flora's father. And then he said to absolutely no one, "George Buckman, how do you do?" Flora sighed. She looked down at Ulysses. Considering the human beings she was surrounded by, believing in a squirrel seemed like an increasingly reasonable plan of action. "I want to apologize," said William Spiver, who was now standing beside her window. "For what?" said Flora. "It wasn't exactly the worst poetry I've ever heard." "Oh," said Flora. "Also, I'm sorry that I couldn't take my glasses off when you asked me to." "Take them off now," said Flora. "I can't," said William Spiver. "They've been glued to my head by evil forces beyond my control." "You lie," said Flora. "Yes, no, I don't, I do. I'm engaging in hyperbole. It seems as if the glasses had been glued onto my head." He lowered his voice. "Actually, I'm afraid that if I take my glasses off, the whole world will unravel." "That's stupid," said Flora. "There are bigger things to worry about. For instance..." Flora realized that she was going to say something to William Spiver that she hadn't intended to say. The words were out of her mouth before she could stop them. "Do you know what an arch nemesis is?" she whispered. "Of course I do," said William Spiver. "Right," said Flora. "Well, Ulysses has got one. It's my mother." William Spiver's eyebrows rose up above his dark glasses. Flora was pleased to note that he looked perfectly surprised and shocked. "Speaking of Ulysses," said Tootie, "I have some poetry that I would like to recite to him." "Are you sure that now is the time for poetry recitation?" said William Spiver. Ulysses sat up straighter in his bootsy boots shoebox. He looked up at Tootie. He nodded. "I was moved by your poetry," said Tootie to the squirrel. Ulysses puffed out his chest. "And I have some poetry that I would like to recite to you in honor of the recent transformation in your life." Tootie put a hand on her chest. "This is Rilke," she said. "You sent out beyond your recall. Go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. Flare up like flame. And make big shadows I can move." Ulysses stared up at Tootie, his eyes bright. "Flare up like flame," said Flora's father from the front seat. "That is moving. Yes, that is quite lovely. Flaring up like a flame. Thank you so much. We have to be on our way right now." "But will you return?" said William Spiver. Here's a picture of William and Tootie and Ulysses and Flora. Flora looked up and saw William Spiver's words hanging on the air above him like a small tattered flag. "But will you return?" "I'm just spending the afternoon with my father, William Spiver," she said. "It's not like I'm heading off to the South Pole. Terrible Things That Can Happen to You had done an extensive piece on what to do if you were stranded at the South Pole. Their advice could be summed up in 3 simple words: eat seal blubber. It was astonishing, really, what people could live through. Flora cheered up all of a sudden just thinking about eating seal blubber and doing impossible things, surviving when the odds were against her and the squirrel. They would figure out a way to outwit the arch nemesis. They would triumph over the shovel and the sack, and they would triumph together like Dolores and Incandesto. "I'm glad," said William Spiver. "I'm glad that you're not going to the South Pacific, Flora Belle." Flora's father cleared his throat. "George Buckman," he said. "How do you do?" "It was nice to meet you, sir," said William Spiver. "Remember those words," said Tootie. Tootie. Flare up like a flame, said Flora's father. I was speaking to the squirrel, said Tootie. Of course, said Flora's father. My apologies, the squirrel. I will see you again, said William Spiver. Beware the arch nemesis, said Flora. We're off to fight evils. As her father backed the car out of the driveway, William Spiver waved at the car. I will see you again. He seemed so stuck on the idea of seeing her again that Flora didn't have the heart to tell him that he was waving in the wrong direction. I'm going to stop right there, you guys, and start with chapter 26, which is called Spies Don't Cry Next Time. Hope you guys are doing good today and you're feeling great. Pick up a book, do a little reading for Mrs. R, will ya? And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.